IronOverLoad.io Hardcore Episode 17. Steve and the Mobster. How's it going?
Good.
Good,
Let's
good.
let's hit it. Let's go.
This one is going to be, we're going to talk about Turinabol, Tbol. We're going to talk about Dianabol, Dbol. So let's start with Tbol a little bit, Mobster, and discuss the difference between Tbol and Dbol and why stacking them could be a very, very interesting cycle. And I've ran this stack a couple times. It's a really good yin and yang stack. And a lot of people don't understand about stacking is it's all about synergy when you're stacking things. It's not just about randomly stacking two things together. So in this instance, you got Tbol. And Tbol is very, very different than Dbol because it does not aromatize into estrogen. So when you take it, you don't have to worry about any type of water retention. You don't have to worry about gynecomastia. You don't have to worry about any of those side effects. You also don't have to worry about androgenic side effects because it's very low when it comes to how androgenic of an effect it gives in your body. So we're talking very low estrogenic issues, very low androgenic issues. So if you use it by itself, it's really going to be a very mild cycle, and you'll be a couple of weeks into it and you'll feel a difference, and then kind of things will kind of just stay around there. You're not going to like boost your bench press, 50 pounds. You're not going to change your physique using Tbol by itself. So stacking Tbol is a really good idea to get more out of it. So in this case, Tbol is one of those steroids that was developed for performance, and Mobster can get into that a little bit as well, but it's really females were the ones who were using it. So as males, we use it, and it's a very, very mild steroid. And one of the advantages that I like about Tbol is I can use it and it won't mess around with me. It's not going to like screw around with my endurance, some of the other things I like to do. So it's kind of a steroid that is not going to mess around with you too much. It's not going to mess with your sleep. It's not going to mess with your appetite. It's not going to mess with, bloating. It's not going to mess with a lot of things in your body, so it's very, very mild. So that's one of the reasons I like Tbol a lot. But yeah, Mobster, what are your thoughts on Tbol?
So we've discussed before, as you know, in other podcasts, just how popular it is with gurus, specifically because of the performance enhancement, as you've just mentioned there, Steve. And of course, as you said earlier on, or referred to earlier on, it was specifically developed for that. As we've discussed in other podcasts, guys, so don't forget, give them a listen. This is the one that was created by the East German state to enhance the performance of their athletes in the big competitions. And when we say big competitions, we're really talking about the Olympic Games and getting those gold medals for national pride. So it was you didn't blow up, you didn't have obvious steroid-like enhancement, physical enhancement in terms of your appearance and whatever else. There wasn't certain drugs, as you know, Steve, sometimes can give you acne. There's other drugs which we're going to get into on this podcast and others to come in terms of water gains and all that kind of stuff. Tbol wasn't. Tbol was where you're going to throw the discus further, the javelin further, put the shot better, and so on and so forth. And so it was done, and it's relatively, I say, short acting in terms of the in and out of this system. And of course, when it was created, but certainly not now, people, it was untraceable. Now, of course, would be a completely different story. And the other thing which we've talked about, as I said, I touched on just now, is, and I said this again and again and again on this podcast, it's one of those that should be more highly rated. I think the only reason that it isn't, Steve, and maybe this is aimed at our younger users and perhaps those that don't compete, is that there's certain drugs that we can take where you feel when you're on. There's certain drugs you can take because you want the pump. There's certain drugs you can take because you want the vascularity. And Tbol doesn't kind of tick those boxes. And yet, as I say, guru after guru after guru, podcast after podcast, Evo, myself, yourself, and anywhere else will turn around and say it's vastly underrated. It should be a part of a cycle. And it's one of those things that it just gives you a little kick. It just gives you a little edge. And so this is why, especially with competition cycles, the performance enhancement for athletes, etc., especially if you're not drug tested, guys, it is rated more highly by those people, by those in the know, than perhaps the sales and any poll would indicate. The next drug that we'll get into momentarily, of course, Steve, is a completely different ball game. And so it's a fascinating one for me. For my own personal thing, so I've not used it. Both of us, of course, used the next drug, and it's not something that necessarily would work for me in terms of strength enhancement. If I was more of an athletic person or more of an athletic trainer, then I can definitely see something being useful here. And certainly, if you and I were working with someone who was into athletics, even baseball, cricket, any kind of running around sort of stuff, where there's a little bit, and again, baseball, I think, when you're exploding with the bat, and certain other sports similar, there's a little bit of athleticism, but there's also an explosive output of strength. Then Tbol would be one of those ones there. I mean, there's probably better usage for those things. But again, it's when we do this podcast, Steve, as you know, we're giving people choices, and as something I said to Steve off air is, when we do this podcast, especially with regards to Tbol, it's something that gets asked about a lot. So it's certainly a very popular drug with our listeners, and certainly with Evo members, and especially in combination with the next drug, Steve.
All right, so next one we're stacking with it on this stack is Dbol. And Dianabol does aromatize into estrogen and is androgenic. So it's basically giving the cycle a kick. So you're giving a nice kick in the butt on the cycle. Yeah. We stack them both together. You're going to notice some really nice pumps in the gym, some really good, nice, clean pumps. Okay. And we're going to discuss dosing on the next segment, but Dianabol was developed really brought to, the whole bodybuilding world. Let me put it that way. And the whole reason it was brought to the bodybuilding world by Dr. Ziegler was so that Americans could use something that didn't involve injecting. Injecting anything in those times was very, very taboo. I mean, if you wanted to just take something in a pill form, and being able to take an anabolic steroid, a hormone, something that's going to enhance your performance in a pill form was very, very advantageous to the athlete, to the American athlete. So really, as much as Tbol can be considered an East German / Russian influenced steroid, Dbol is more of an American influenced steroid. And Dbol is probably the most used steroid mobster in American history, injectable or oral. And to this day, it is still the #1 oral used due to it being so damn cheap and so simple to use. Like, anybody can use Dbol and get results. It's so simple to use, and it gives you incredible results. So yeah, chime in on that one. You love Dbol. Tell us about your experience.
I love Dbol. Guys, if you want to know the kind of history and background, especially with regards to the good doctor, and at that particular time, Steve, specifically the athletes from York Barbell, I'm referring to both the bodybuilders to a lesser degree, but especially the weightlifters, which of course York was focused on back in the day with Bob Hoffman, etc. Check out Randy Roach's Muscle, Smoke and Mirrors. There's a great historical what happened, how they was using it, what happened to the performance. And there's an example here, Steve, and this is of course the reason why it's incredibly popular. The athletes, not only did the weights go up on the exercise that they were using, but they grew bigger. In other words, they outgrew the weight classes that they were lifting in. They also, because of the whole 50s and /60s, especially free drug culture, etc., vis-a-vis getting with LSD and cannabis and other drugs that the guys and girls from all of society were using at that particular time. So there was a whole sort of, we'll experiment with everything, we'll try everything. On my own personal experience, Steve, as you well know, firstly, it's almost a given. Certainly in my time, and perhaps even now, it's nearly always the first drug that everybody tries. And it certainly was in my case. And perhaps, again, I don't think my responses were unusual in that I gained 10 pounds on and kept probably 6 pounds off the cycle. But it's something I've been able to go back to. And as I said, another podcast, Steve, it's one of those ones I know immediately whether it's genuine or not. I know immediately what I'm going to kind of gain just based on experience. Certainly at a point now in my career, in my lifting journey, where I don't need to gain pounds and pounds and pounds. But even then, I would still, for example, Steve, if I was doing some sort of bench press competition, this would be one that I would use again without hesitation, because I know literally the size increase, and even if that's just from water, the size increase will cushion my joints, and the leverage advantage because of the size increase will add kilos, pounds to the bar. So for me, it's great. And again, as you said, Steve, it's very straightforward. You know more or less what's going to happen on it, and it's cheap. So that, and then combining it with Tbol and we know that this is very popular, as just said just now, with regards to Tbol, the combination is incredibly popular. I think, Steve, it's one of those things, perhaps, and this might not be for all our listeners and for all our followers, but it might be one of those things where they want the performance enhancement from Tbol, but they want the feeling of being on that great pump, that slight swelling, etc. And again, this is all dose dependent, of course, that they get for it. I think you even used the phrase the kick from Dbol, and I think there's a thing that I've said sometimes, and this is one of those mobsterisms, guys, that you will see me say on the forums when I'm replying, right? So I'm a great person for what is the end result. Did you want to get bigger? Did you get bigger? Did you want to get leaner? Did you get leaner? Did you want to add pounds to the bar? Did that happen? The end result for me is more important than how you feel or the pump or whatever when you're on cycle. The end result is really what it's all about. However, I appreciate that a lot of guys like to feel when they're on. And I think this is one of those ones where Dbol is the one where you feel when you're on, whereas Tbol is the one that's actually giving you the performance enhancement. And especially after, because it's such a mild steroid in that particular way. And of course, that all comes down to, which we can address in other podcasts, Steve, the training and the focus on improving your athletic ability while using performance enhancing drugs. Back to you.
Just talk about dosing on this. So when I stack these, I like to do it on a conservative cycle. And yes. I like to do 20 milligrams of each. And when you do 20 milligrams of each, it really mitigates the side effects. It's not as bad. And we'll get into side effects in a second. But I got really good, clean, conservative results doing 20 milligrams of each for 6 weeks. Now, that's really all you need to do, and it's not an expensive cycle either, Mobster. It's not going to cost very much to do a cycle like this. It's gonna be less. It's gonna be less than going and getting a nice auto detailing on your vehicle. So, it's a simple stack, and you'll get really good results. Now, I mean, there's a more aggressive way to run this cycle. You can run them higher. You can do 50 milligrams of each. That's another option. Now, if you do 50 milligrams of each, you want to really start looking out for those androgenic and estrogenic side effects, because they can come on really quick. Remember, with these steroids, these oral steroids, they have much shorter half-lives than injectables in most situations. Of course, injectables like suspension, which have no esters attached, or really, really short ester like propionate or something. Okay, that's a different story. But even with these orals, I mean, we're talking about with Dianabol, 4 or 5 hour half-life, I mean, very, very short. So they're in your system. You're taking them twice a day. You're in your system pretty good after a few days. So you start seeing results a lot quicker than you would think. And one of the things you'll probably notice, you're in the gym, you're lifting, you'll be doing 6 reps. And then after, maybe 5 days, you go back and you do the same split you did 5 days prior, and now you're doing 8 reps, the same weight. And you're like, whoa, what a change. Well, that means that these are reaching peak in your system. And it'll take about a week to reach peak in your system, a week or less. And then you can really start seeing those results. And then when you stop taking it, it's also out of your system quicker. So I haven't ran these more than 20 or 25 milligrams a day each together like this. So, but I've had clients and I've had other people I know run at 50 milligrams, and really, you're going to have definitely going to have more results, more gains, but you're also going to have more side effects. So you really need to watch out for that. So what do you think, Mobster, about dosing? How would you dose these, and what would be the advantages?
Steve, I can't see me ever wanting to go, and even with the combining these two together, everyone wanting to get as high as 100 milligrams of orals. I mean, that's just obviously down to the side effects. It's down to the simple fact, as we know, of course, Steve, that processing orals in the body is a harder hit on the liver. And so me wanting to go much over 50, 60 milligrams total is going to be unusual. I'm also, as I said just now, Steve, very familiar with my response, especially to Dianabol. So I can't see that, if I get a great result from 30, 40, 50 milligrams of the single Dianabol, why would I then want to go much higher than that if I'm using Tbol? And of course, if I'm using Tbol in conjunction with Dianabol, it's like you said earlier on, it's a synergy. I'm after an athletic response, I'm after some lean muscle gains, and so on. I don't need to blow up. And so, guys, it's one of those things, again, there is an argument, as Steve said, especially on cycle, to want in the gains. I just this morning, Steve, I replied to a thread on an evolutionary where the member was looking at a 30 pounds gain, and I said that's just not going to happen. You look at one of 5 or 10 pounds gain. A cycle like this, I could see me keeping, especially if I adjust my diet and my training afterwards, a good 6-7 pounds, and that's of lean muscle tissue. I can see, as you said already, and this is especially true, Steve. For me, my response, and I've told this story before, from a Friday to a Monday on genuine proper Dbol versus the stuff that I'd been taking prior to those days, which obviously wasn't dosed properly, and it was 2 different sources at the time, to be said, was a 4 pound gain. That's from Friday to Monday. So I know how I respond. I know what's going to happen. And for me, then, if I know that I can get that, and I think I was only using 30, 40 milligrams of Dianabol then, Steve, then why would I want to go higher? So for me, I think the sweet spot here would be 30 milligrams of each, even going down to as low as your 20, but certainly I can't see me needing to go up as high as 50 milligrams of each. It may be just how you and I respond versus other people. It may well be the fact that we've done other cycles in the past. So there's all those kind of things to weigh up. Guys, you don't always need to go higher and higher and higher every cycle, but sometimes you do need to tweak the dosages to find a sweet spot for you. So Steve and I know how our bodies respond. We know how we get on with certain particular drugs. So we know that we don't need, in our cases, in our examples, to go as high as 50. It doesn't mean that you can't, but again, the caveat would be that the higher the dosages, the higher the response, but the higher the risk of side effects. Let's get into the side effects now, Steve. I mean, obviously, the greater of these two is going to be Dianabol. You go first.
Well, first of all, both of these are liver toxic and they're 17 alpha alkylated. So you want to be aware of that when you're taking them. So it's very important to use liver support. I strongly recommend Tutka to be used with them. Tutka is the most modern and up-to-date supplement that we have noticed works. I mean, 20 years ago, everyone said, oh, use milk thistle. And I'm not saying milk thistle isn't a good liver supplement, but Tutka is excellent. And it is, basically going to help with all your organs, not just your liver. So since these both are liver toxic, you want to take care of your liver. Obviously, you don't want to be drinking alcohol on cycle. I mean, I don't know how many times I have to tell this to people. If you drink alcohol, don't use steroids. You're wasting your time and you're only going to beat down your liver. You're just going to make yourself tired the whole cycle. So, and that is one of the side effects that you could notice on the cycle is fatigue. When you're running a cycle or in general in life, if you feel fatigue and you don't have energy during the day, that's a red flag that you could have organ issues, whether it's the heart, the kidneys, or the liver. So if you have any of those issues, it's a good chance you have some type of strain going on with your organs. So look, anabolic steroids, they all mess with your kidneys, they mess with your heart, and they mess with your liver, even injectables. But in this case, these are 17 alpha alkylated. They are going to be liver toxic. So use the Tutka, use your liver support, and then make sure you're eating good, you're exercising correctly, and you're sleeping good on the cycle. And that will mitigate the side effects that you experience. Now, with the Dbol, depending on how much you use, the Dianabol could cause estrogenic side effects. So you want to watch out for that. But because the short half-life of the Dbol, if you start noticing you're getting these types of estrogenic side effects, you can drop the dose down or just stop it entirely. And it will trickle out of your system pretty rapidly unlike using a long ester testosterone, which will take weeks to be out of your system. So Mobster, chime in a little bit on that too.
One of the things I was just thinking about, Steve, and this is probably true of all cycles, but it's especially true of a cycle that includes Dbol in terms of weight gain, Steve. So, for example, guys, if you're going to get an athletic enhancement from the Turinabol and a watery gain, and obviously, hopefully, some of that would be muscular gain at the end of the cycle from the Dianabol, Steve, what happens is that you will train harder, you will lift more, and the gains themselves, and of course, as Steve said, the oral steroids alkylated issue with regards to the liver are all stressors. Now, something that people don't always pay attention to, Steve, and even with a 5 or 10 pound gain, you might notice this, especially the lighter guys, the effect on your sleep of a large gain, whether that's muscle or water, is quite noticeable. And as Steve said, we talk about this so often on podcasts, on the forums, and so on and so forth. The importance of rest and recovery after training is incredibly important. So let's just for a second, I'll focus specifically on the Dianabol, Steve. If I gained, as I said earlier on, 10 pounds on cycle on Dianabol at 30, 40, 50 milligrams a day, that's a lot of weight to gain in fairly short order. And I'm training very hard. I'm getting stronger because I'm on Dianabol. Never mind the performance enhancement with Tbol, just on the Dianabol. And people don't understand that gaining 10 pounds in relatively short order, as Steve said, 4 to 6 weeks, and even a retention of 6 pounds afterwards, takes a little while getting used to. So one of the issues can be disturbed sleep. And then, as Steve said already, if you are using oral steroids, you have that, as Steve said, with all steroids, but specifically because of the alkalization of oral steroids, it's another additional stress. So you have to take all of these things into consideration, and then you have to allow for more rest. You have to allow for more organ protection. You have to think about perhaps, for example, guys, Steve, again, upping a small amount of the oil in your diet in terms of healthy oils, omega fatty acids, just to protect your joints and so on. Because again, we don't think of these things. We go, oh, I'm going to put on 5 or 10 pounds on my press, but I'm not thinking about whether my shoulders or my elbows are going to ache. I'm going to put on 5 or 10 pounds of muscle on cycle, but I'm not thinking about the sleep disturbance. And again, this is a good example of this. You can ask your partners, listeners, would be when you gain weight on cycle, do you snore more? And snoring sometimes isn't a bigger deal in and of itself, but it's when you stop snoring at 3 o'clock in the morning and the girlfriend or the partner starts, it's like doing that all night. You don't realize it. Perhaps you've given yourself a mild form of sleep apnea. So you have to think about these things, and these are all stress of sleep. If you're not sleeping properly, even if you are sleeping through the night because of apnea, that's going to slow down your ability to do well in terms of your performance. And by performance, I mean in the gym, I mean in terms of your athletic performance and so on. These are all things that they very rarely get discussed. We all go, we want to be better in the gym. I want more muscle. I want to look amazing on the beach, but you're not necessarily thinking about some of these side effects that come. And again, I say specifically with Dbol. And it's another reason why gurus and experts recommend Tbol, because you don't get as many of these side effects. But again, like Steve said earlier on, synergy. When we talk about any combination of steroid, we're looking for the yin and the yang. We're looking for a small effect of this and a small effect of thing, and the two things together, coming together, giving us exactly what you want. This was precisely why we both agree on fairly low dosages. I mean, again, I can't. If I did a low dose of either of those two, I think I'd probably be looking 6 to 8 pounds on a set versus my Dbol only cycle being 10. And again, that's my size. It might be 5 or 6 pounds for everybody else. And how much muscle would I keep afterwards? It won't sound like a lot, but I know Steve agrees with me. If we said, even if we walked away from this cycle with just a 3 pound gain, at our level of experience, of the time that we've been training, and with the advice that we've been given for a long time, people think 3 pounds isn't much. But if you do 2-3 cycles a year, that's 3, 6, and 9 pounds. And it's lean tissue. Even the Dbol is going to give you some lean tissue just by virtue of you being able to train harder. And of course, the fascia stretching that's going to come from the pump. That's why it's a lovely combination, Steve. What do you think?
So you'll notice, I'm going to tell you, what everyone wants to know, what can I expect? And it's good to set goals before a cycle. So in this case,
Yes.
when you're on it, like I said, it's got, these orals that have short half-lives. You should feel within a few days not only a strength increase in the gym, but you'll also feel your mood enhancement, because Tbol doesn't hurt your mood and Dbol enhances your mood. You get that little effect of extra androgens and estrogen, right, in your body and your brain, and it's going to make you feel good. And I'm sure, Momster, you know what I'm talking about because you've used Dbol a lot. When you use Dbol, you feel good on it because high hormones, male hormones in the body, combined with high estrogen in the body, will give you a nice little sugar high. And you'll feel great. You'll jump out of bed. Sorry about that. I dropped my microphone. I hope that wasn't too loud, guys. So anyway, you'll jump out of bed and you'll be like, man, I want to hit the gym. You'll be so motivated to hit the gym. So this is one of the reasons why it's very important before you start the cycle. I ask all of you to put in the hours in the gym first before you hit these steroids. And, I could easily be like most of these jagoffs, that you see doing these podcasts and on social media who tell you just go run steroids because they want to make a sale. They want to make a sale. They want to sell you their shitty supplements. They want to make a commission off recommending, their steroid sources and all this. I'm telling you guys, look, wait until you really put in your hours in the gym. This way, when you run this cycle, when you run these steroids, you can really feel the difference and you'll feel that, wow, I can do 8 reps versus 6 reps. You'll know that within the first 5 days. You'll know that. But if you don't put in the hours first, you're not going to know any difference. We see so many guys, they run steroids and they're like, I'm disappointed with my results. And it's like, look, did you have results before you ran steroids? They're like, no. Well, that's probably why you're disappointed. Yeah. Because if you put in the hours first, once you hit that plateau, it's easy for you to bust through on the steroids, and then you'll be like, wow, I'm really taking my fitness to the next level. So yeah, I mean, Mobster, give us your thoughts on that. The effects of using steroids.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%, Steve. And I've said this multiple times off air and on air, and many times on the forums, as you know. So, for example, people say, oh, I did such and such a combination of drugs and I didn't gain any strength. I say, okay, what was your strength program? As a good example, just yesterday we had a question come up about a guy that wants to bench 3 plates. I believe he's at 280 pounds now. He says, and I cannot bench anymore. Now, if he's got to 280 pounds, Steve, he's not that far away from 3 plates. I would question how long he's been training, what his diet's like, what his training program is to add weight to the bar and so on. Because in the past, I've seen, and again, guys, there's no excuse. You've got information from podcasts just like this. In the past, I've seen guys that go to the gym and they expect the weight to be added to the bar, regardless of the exercise, just because they go to the gym. Well, on that basis, just because I go to the supermarket, I expect free chicken. That's not going to happen. You got to go, right, what's my plan? If it's go to the gym and I've not done drugs and I do this cycle, well, then you'll gain something on cycle. But what have you changed? You should get a little bit stronger. Your performance on Tbol especially should be that little bit better in terms of your athletic performance. Your strength and your size should go up on the Dbol. But you should also have an aim. So, for example, and I'll give you a very quick tip here, guys. With the possible exception of my very first Dynabol cycle, which was my first cycle ever, age 37, that was literally for me to see how I responded to steroids, to see whether or not they were going to make me angry, void rage, blah, 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 all the usual stuff. I didn't know any better. And it was very much an experiment. Pretty much every other cycle has been associated with a specific target. That would be more likely now as I compete less, or certainly when I competed with the idea of making me stronger for a competition. And what I would do then, guys, is I wouldn't just necessarily train a strength cycle and a steroid cycle at the same time. The strength cycle will start first. And typically we're looking at 16 weeks out for a competition. So 16 weeks, 8 weeks would be without any performance enhancement. And then with 8 weeks to go and the last dose pretty much on the last day or even the day before, Steve, I would aim to get as strong as I possibly could so that the very last day, either the last day or literally the day of the competition, I'm as strong as I possibly can be at that time. Now, guys, if your aim is to have a six-pack or if your aim is to put an inch on your arms, it should be exactly the same approach. The only caveat, as I've mentioned occasionally on the forum, is that if you want to keep the muscle, you need to make changes after the cycle too. People sometimes have this thing, and I think sometimes it's made worse because that's kind of how it works the first and second time that you go on cycle, but it doesn't work like that all the time. And what I mean by that is that the first and second cycle, your body's never had that level of testosterone, you've never trained that well before, and lo and behold, you do your first cycle and you blow up, and without almost any changes at all, if any, Steve, you kind of keep muscle just because. But unfortunately, the long-term plan, and the guys, you do need to think in long term, that doesn't happen. So again, with this cycle, I would probably see me, like I said earlier on, let's imagine I was a new trainer or relatively new. This was my second or my third cycle. I could see me with my structure and training the way that I do, gaining 8 pounds. But what I would need to do, Steve, would tweak my training afterwards. So what I call it as a new baseline. In other words, if, for example, I wanted to bench press 3 plates like that member, I would train specifically with the idea of the sets and reps rather than single doubles and triples. A simple one would be a 5x5 program done for the same 6 weeks of the cycle, but perhaps 6 weeks running up to that cycle. And I would be looking to add 5 or 10 pounds to the bar. Now, after the cycle, I would look into my new off-cycle PB to be at least 5 pounds more than before. So as Steve said, that is planning to get stronger. It's the same way if you're adding muscle. It's the same way if you're getting leaner. And you need to have these kind of precepts in place, a plan in place for any of the things that you're trying to do, whether it's stronger, leaner, or more muscular. And that applies on cycle as well as off. You don't automatically keep the gains just because you was on a cycle. And this is, it's not a crazy cycle. It's not a mild cycle. Certainly not the dosages that Steve and I are talking about. But again, if this was your second or third cycle and you gained as much as I think I would want you to try and keep at least 4 pounds of new muscular tissue. And that might require a very small increment in your dietary habits. It might have a new baseline for your strength to come from. Same thing in regards to perhaps a lowering of your body fat, if that was your aim for another cycle, and so on and so forth. It's one of the things that Steve and I talk about. It's one of we're very familiar with it, and of course, this is why we give advice out, and we're quite good at coaching people in that particular regards, because I think it's not something that people kind of look into too much, Steve. And even, for example, neither one of us like running these cycles for long lengths of time. Dylan Gamilli would say 4 weeks. Steve and I, 4 weeks is a little bit too short, although at my time of life now, Steve, and again, with my ability to know how to train, I might run 4-week cycles. But for me, I've always preferred 8 weeks. I can see that the sweet spot here for most people is going to be 6 weeks. But it's, again, guys, it's not just I'm going to take drugs and get bigger, more muscular, going to get leaner. You should have things in place before, and you should then tweak those same things after. Make the changes to keep the gains, to keep the fat off, to keep some of that strength that you gained on cycle. And as again, think about the Tbol again and the way that we talked about it earlier on. It was specifically done for performance enhancement. And of course, they want to be as fast or as powerful or whatever athletic as they possibly can for which I think the Olympics is what, 4 days, Steve? They want to be qualify, and they want to do qualifying throws or qualifying tosses. And then when the world record needed, when they need to get the gold medal, they want to be able to put their performance on time. But it's still a relatively short period of time. Afterwards, they ease off, they take some time off from the Olympics, they get fated, they get, driven around in a Mercedes or a Rolls Royce and taken to see the Prime Minister and whatever other countries that they're in. So that, again, for those guys would be changing stuff. And they're being coached with the idea of peaking at certain particular times. But it's not the same level every single year. It should be a slightly increased level a year, because that's what the coaches are planning for. That's what the athletes are planning for. And that's what you guys should plan for. Steve.
Sums it up. Great advice on this one. We'll always try to give you guys some good advice toward the end of these podcasts for sure. So great show. And, we will talk to you guys on the next episode. This was IO number 17. Take care.
Please note, we are not doctors, and the opinions on these shows are ours and ours alone. It is our view and based on our experience and views on the topic. The podcasts are for informational purposes and entertainment only. The freedom of speech and the First Amendment applies.